The neural interface burned cold against Kiven's temple as the guards dragged him through the obsidian corridors of the matriarch's orbital palace. His wrists were bound with graviton cuffs that hummed with barely contained energy, warping spacetime just enough to make escape impossible without tearing his hands apart at the molecular level. He'd been caught 3 rotations ago, attempting to infiltrate the palace's quantum computing core. The mission had been simple: extract the encryption keys that would free his colony from the matriarch's iron grip. Instead, proximity sensors he hadn't accounted for had flooded the chamber with neural disruptors, and he'd woken in a holding cell with his synaptic patterns already copied and analyzed. Now they brought him before Queen Lysara herself. The throne room defied conventional physics. It existed in a pocket dimension, walls shifting between states of matter as if uncertain of their own reality. The matriarch sat upon a throne of frozen light, her age impossible to determine behind the biomodifications that kept the ruling class alive for centuries. Beside her stood a woman Kiven recognized from intelligence briefings, Anna, the widowed princess, wearing the black mourning bands that signified her husband's death in the resource wars. Kiven Thrace, the queen's voice resonated through his bones via subdermal speakers embedded in the floor. Insurgent, saboteur, and according to our psychological algorithms, idealist. He said nothing. His neural training kept his thoughts shielded, but he knew their technology could read stress hormones, pupil dilation, microscopic muscle movements. Your people believe I'm a tyrant, Lysara continued, standing. She moved with fluid grace despite her modifications. They believe the oxygen tax is oppression, that water rationing is cruelty. They don't understand that we're 3 generations from the collapse of Earth. Every breath, every drop must be accounted for, or we all die. Convenient philosophy, Kiven managed, when your people breathe freely while minds suffocate. The queen smiled, a calculated expression. Which brings us to your situation. Under colonial law, attempted infiltration of royal systems carries 1 sentence: neural dissolution. Your consciousness would be uploaded and fragmented across our computational network. You'd exist forever as scattered thoughts, aware but powerless. Ice flooded Kiven's veins. He'd heard stories of that punishment. It was considered worse than death. However, the queen gestured to Anna, who had remained motionless throughout, I have a proposal. My daughter was widowed 6 months ago when her husband's ship suffered a catastrophic failure during patrol. The investigation determined it was sabotage, your people's handiwork. Kiven's jaw tightened. He knew about that attack. The insurgency had targeted a weapons transport, but intelligence had been wrong. Anna is heir to the throne, Lysara said, but our succession laws require the monarch to be married. Without a husband she cannot rule, and without her on the throne, the queen's eyes glittered. My more militant advisors would finally have the excuse they need to sterilize the outer colonies. 20 billion people, Kiven, gone in a calculated purge. You're bluffing. Am I? The queen activated a holographic display. Deployment orders, fleet movements, atmospheric incinerators being moved into position around the colony cylinders. I've held them back for 5 years. Anna is my restraint, my conscience. But if she cannot rule, if I must choose a successor from the military council. She let the implication hang. Kiven looked at Anna for the first time directly. She met his gaze, her expression unreadable. Her eyes were modified, enhanced with quantum processors that could perform calculations faster than standard neural tissue. Behind those crystalline irises, what was she thinking? Marry her, the queen said simply. Become prince consort. You'll have freedom, resources, access to the inner court, and your people will have an advocate at the highest level of power. And if I refuse? Neural dissolution, and I'll have no choice but to let the Hawks have their war. The cruelty of it was elegant. Die horribly or betray everything he believed by joining the system he'd fought against. But those 20 billion lives. This is coercion, Kiven said quietly. "This is survival," the Queen replied. "For all of us. The universe doesn't care about our ideals, only our choices." Anna finally spoke, her voice carrying harmonics that suggested direct neural transmission. "I didn't ask for this either." She stepped forward, and Kivin noticed the slight tremor in her hands, the only sign of emotion in her otherwise controlled demeanor. "My husband was a good man. He believed in reform, in easing restrictions on the colonies. His death set back our cause by decades." "Then why agree to this farce?" Kivin demanded. "Because farce is better than genocide." Her enhanced eyes seemed to look through him, reading data streams he couldn't perceive. "Our analysts give us 5 years before resource scarcity triggers complete societal collapse. We need radical changes immediately. But change requires power, and power requires legitimacy. I can't rule alone." The Queen moved to a window that showed the curve of the planet below, Earth, still recovering from the ecological disasters that had driven humanity to the orbital habitats. "Your insurgency has popular support but no infrastructure. We have infrastructure but losing popular support. Together we have a chance," Anna finished. "A small one, but the only chance there is." Kiven's mind raced. Every tactical instinct screamed trap, but the strategic calculation was brutal in its clarity. Dead, he helped no one. Married to Anna, he'd be watched constantly, his every move scrutinized, but he'd also have access to information, to resources, to the mechanisms of power itself. "What guarantees do I have?" he asked. "None," the Queen said bluntly. "Except this. If I wanted you simply eliminated, you'd already be scattered across our servers. The fact that we're having this conversation means I'm genuine. I need Anna to rule, and she needs you to have the legitimacy that comes from uniting the factions." Anna approached him close enough that he could see the microcircuits embedded in her skin, the fusion of biology and technology that marked the ruling class. "I won't pretend to love you," she said softly. "And I don't expect you to love me, but I will work with you. Every reform you've demanded, atmospheric regulation, water redistribution, colony autonomy, they're all on the table. Real negotiations, real change. In exchange for my complicity. In exchange for your partnership." She extended her hand. "I can't undo what's been done. My people have oppressed yours for generations, but I can try to build something different, if you're willing." Kivin stared at her hand. 20 billion lives. That's what it came down to. His pride, his integrity, his very identity as a rebel, all weighed against the simple math of survival. He thought of the children in the outer cylinders, growing up with air so rationed they could barely run without gasping. The families huddled around water recyclers, praying they'd last another week. The constant fear that one day the inner habitats would simply decide they weren't worth the resources. Anna's hand remained extended, steady despite the tremor he'd noticed before. A small thing, that tremor. A sign that beneath the modifications and the royal bearing, she was as trapped as he was. Different cage, different bars, but trapped nonetheless. "If I do this," Kivin said slowly, "I want full access to resource allocation algorithms, complete transparency on supply chains, and a seat on the Environmental Council." Anna glanced at her mother. The Queen nodded almost imperceptibly. "Agreed," Anna said. Kivin reached out, the graviton cuffs humming as his hands moved. Anna touched a control on her wrist, and the cuffs dissolved into quantum foam, evaporating like morning frost. His freed hands met hers. "Then I accept," he said, the words tasting like ashes and hope in equal measure. The Queen smiled, satisfied. "The ceremony will be in 3 days. That gives you time to notify your people, to frame this properly. Tell them you've infiltrated the inner court. Tell them you're fighting from the inside now. It's even true." As guards, now escorts, led him away to royal quarters instead of a cell, Anna walked beside him. In the corridor's privacy, she spoke again, voice barely a whisper. "I meant what I said, about reform, about change." So did I, Kivin replied, about fighting for my people. Then perhaps, Anna said, the ghost of a smile touching her lips, we're not as opposed as we think. Through the palace windows, Earth turned slowly below, a world still healing from humanity's mistakes. Above them, the orbital habitats spun like jewels on invisible strings, each one a fragile bubble of life in the void. 3 days until the wedding. 3 days until Kivin Thrace, insurgent and idealist, became a prince of the very empire he'd sworn to destroy. No choice left indeed. But perhaps, he thought, meeting Anna's quantum-enhanced gaze, choice was never the point, only what you did with the hand you were dealt. And they'd just been dealt each other.